Hey everybody, it's 23. This is Plutus PBL live coding with Gimbal Labs and friends. Let me just get the screen share going over here. We were just talking a little bit about the DEMU launch yesterday. Newman, thanks for getting these notes here. There's the Miro. And kind of just shooting the breeze about what might happen there. But I wanted to actually make a connection between what DEMU is and some of the things we're working on in the Plutus PBL course. So for anybody who's not aware, DEMU is a new music protocol built on Cardano, and they released their first product yesterday, which is a jukebox that allows you to buy a token and then listen to some songs. And there's an interface for it. You can go look at it. But what's really interesting about that interface is that it's just the first example of what will be a headless application. And anybody who wants to is going to be able to grab the APIs of the DEMU protocol and build their own jukebox. If you want it to look completely different, if you want to cater to a different audience, you're going to be able to do that. Because the tokens, they're just on the Cardano blockchain. And they can be used anywhere for any purpose, in addition to listening to songs on this platform that's going live right now. And this is a much more exciting, and real example than what we show here in the Plutus PBL course, but it's not too different from what's happening here in the PPBL faucet project. This is the halfway point of the course, and when you get here, you'll compile your own instance of a Plutus script. You'll deploy it on chain. You'll add some tokens that are locked up, and people can grab them if they have a different token. In this case, the contributor token that you minted at the start of the course. And then at the end, you'll actually register your instance of this application with an aggregator. And the aggregator is right here. So here's all the work that different students in this PBL course have submitted. And it's ugly on purpose because this takes us right back to the point that I was sharing about DEMU, okay? Anybody who wanted to make a different aggregator of these faucets could. You could just make this thing look different. You could make it look more attractive. You could censor it and only allow certain submissions to appear on your version of the aggregator. You could change the rules entirely, right? And so this is a pattern that's going to become, I think, more and more common as more use cases are built on Cardano, right? Here we have a trivial faucet. If you have this token, you get that token. With DEMU, if I have this token, I can play these songs. But I bet you can start to imagine similar use cases. And once they're built, once the Plutus logic has been created once, you can have all sorts of different user experiences with those smart contracts. At a high level, is that idea starting to really resonate with people, this concept of contract instances and different UIs? Mm-hmm. In other exciting news about this, we did have the 13th successful submission to this project last week. As you can see right here, 13 students have finished Module 204 by submitting a solution to that project. And that means that the new Module 301 will be released this week on Friday. So our first deep dive into Plutus, now that we really start to have this big picture view of how Cardano works, how transactions work, and even this concept of headless applications that I was just going through, now we're ready to go a little deeper into the smart contract code itself. I'm looking forward to doing that over the next few weeks and as everybody else is ready. but we don't really have an agenda for these live coding sessions. So we'll get to any given module when the time is right. There's also some hot fixes we can make here. Sebastian pointed out that something's going on with the names of these tokens. So troubleshooting is always a fun way to spend some time at these sessions. And I'd like to add that as an option for today. But before we decide what to do, I want to kick it to everybody here. What have you been working on? And what questions do you currently have?
I have a question. When for example, I want to know if, for example, if Aiken, the Aiken suffers some kind of update of the libraries that can affect in some way the policy ID that the smart contracts can, the smart contracts that generate generate Aiken in some way, because I was trying the lesson 202, the module 202, in the part of the Aikens part where you can use Aiken to generate the policy ID.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I obtained some different policy ID, and my tokens went to a different policy ID and not the policy that the PBL has. So I have to check the procedure in any case, but I want to know if some kind of actualization in Aiken can affect the ability of Aiken to generate a proper policy ID, or I don't know.
No, you nailed it. That's when Aiken gets updated, the way it translates or compiles from the validator code eventually to a policy ID or a contract address, those will change. And so that's, you probably did it perfectly, and we need to update the course to the latest version of Aiken.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
But because that's actually, this has been a common theme these last few weeks, and it has to be a priority for our team over the next few weeks, is getting the course updated for all these little things that have changed. And that's going to be one of the most common ones. But something else came up last week. Latest.
Oh,
There was something else that needed to be updated in the course. Never remember.
it was something that that somebody and I saw. It was like the contributor, like those first bits of the contributor page were offline, but those were fixed.
Yeah. That was some retroactive troubleshooting that might actually be related to the additional troubleshooting that we have to do. What was wrong with contributor page? That's another thing that could be interesting to look at. Is anybody working through a module right now that you're stuck on for any reason?
No, I'm not stuck. Where are you, Dan?
I'm 201.4, I think, where we're changing the React. Doing queries, and there's examples of what other people have done. So I was going to try and write myself a little query to actually, rather than taking a policy ID and all the tokens on the policy ID, take a wallet address and display any tokens held by that wallet, because I just thought that would be something slightly different and it will challenge me to actually think a little bit.
Right.
Okay.
The other thing, going back to the Aiken thing, one of the things you could do would be to put a little bit of an example of how you can retrieve all your tokens from the old policy and transfer them to the new policy ID that the latest version of Aiken has produced, so that in
Very good.
future, when there's an Aiken update, you don't necessarily have to run out to the and change the course. You can say, if this happens and your policy ID is different, this is what you can do.
Because we say write the minting validator. Yeah, but somewhere, was it on the mastery assignment? This must be it. Oh, right, we have the expected policy ID for lesson 202.5, the Aiken, and that's it right here. So all we really have to do, we can keep this policy ID up to date when we notice that Aiken has been updated. And Dan, like you're saying, we can add a note right here that says, hey, look, this policy ID was generated from this version of Aiken on this date. And then anytime somebody, we can have people, if you didn't get the same one, check what version of Aiken you're running. And if it's different, that's why. Awesome.
That's what I'm going to be on next. I'm at 202.2.
Beautiful.
But I'm not stuck there. I've got to watch the video, and I might do that.
You could
today.
also date the IDs and have a list of them.
Yeah,
dependent on the version
over time. Yep, I like that. I'm going to just throw this screen grab on here.
Nice.
And throw it right here with that sticky note. That's the task. And so where we're also really trying to go is to, and this goes back to like the catalyst proposals we were talking last week. We want to just have a treasury for people who want to jump in and take on little tasks like this. And so just always, when we talk about contribution, development tasks are always going to be one of the ways that can happen. But even just course revisions are such a great way for people to start dipping their toes in, make your first official merge request, for example. So we'll look for building those systems. And anytime people have ideas, you don't have to ask for permission. Okay, so like Dan's ideas about how we can add a message here or this kind of thing. Merge requests are always welcome to the course repo. But good, we can get that one updated. I'm definitely due to update Aiken on my machine. I should probably check on the command line right now what version I'm running, and you'll find out how long it's been since I've gotten in there.
What's the Aiken version? Flag version? Okay, yeah.
What's the current version right now?
I've got 1.0.4-alpha.
Currently, yep, you're up to date. It looks. Oh no.
Yeah.
May not be the latest version. How do we find out? Find the latest version on Crates.io. 1016-alpha.
Oh boy.
All right, I'm gonna come clean right now.
Oh.
106 alpha. Okay, so that's from 3 months ago, right? Not too far out of date. But I'm excited. We'll actually be spending time with Aiken soon, because right after we look at, it's not in that view yet. Coming up after we jump into Plutus TX for the first time in modules 301 and 302, Aiken is next. So we'll get a chance to translate some contracts that we've already been working with, and find out. Aiken's getting a lot of love, and everybody who I know who has tried using it really wants to keep using it. So that's a really good sign. Cool.
What about the Luddites amongst us who haven't used it yet?
Don't worry, you know, it's barely on mainnet, right? It's just starting to roll out, and I think the more you do to build up a mental model of UTXOs, transactions, and what a validator is doing in the first place, the less it's going to ultimately matter which language you end up choosing to get there, because there's going to be several coexisting. Well, it sounds like a lot of people. Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Sorry, I know. I was just thinking. I started out with Cardano CLI, building transactions that way, and learning Haskell and Plutus. So it's kind of what I'm familiar with. And these newfangled things, as you said, they're unknowns at the moment, aren't they? To a degree, are they bomb-proof the same way Haskell is? We will find out in due course, I'm sure.
It's going to be really fun to compare the experiences of building the same thing on different smart contract platforms. Erez, what do you think?
Yeah, I just wanted to add regarding Aiken, I really like the amount of detail and attention they put into even just the documentation. It's very user friendly and welcoming and colorful, and it makes me want to read more and learn more about it. So I think they're doing a good job with that and the branding too.
Agreed. Yeah.
And would you call Aiken it's a .ak file, which is cool, but it's a Haskell. Like this is Aiken is Haskell?
Ooh, great question. And let's look at
I mean, it could be written in Haskell. Like there's something that was written in Rust, I guess.
right.
Yeah, it's
so it's almost correct, but not exactly, to say that Plutus TX is to Haskell as Aiken is to Rust. Okay. At the end of the day, the syntax we're using right here in a .ak file, just make this a little bigger, is going to be pretty familiar to a Rust developer. Okay. But it's not exactly Rust. Whereas Plutus TX is actually, to write in Plutus TX, you're actually writing directly in a Haskell file, and you're just importing all the Plutus libraries. Okay. So Plutus TX is a library. You can almost think of it as a plugin to be imported from Haskell. Whereas Aiken really is a unique language with its own new file extension, even though it's built on Rust and shares a fair amount of syntax with Rust.
Okay.
And right, this is, as you go deeper into any language, you start to look at how to translate between them, and you can decide which view of a validator you like better, right? Maybe you've seen a couple of Plutus validators at this point. Here's an Aiken validator. Just like in Plutus, it takes datum, redeemer, and context as parameters, right? So they have that exactly in common. And then we have a bit different logic down here within this validator function, this vesting function. And then we've got some helper functions down here.
I got to say, it looks it's not just after a summer and some of looking at it, it's not as wall of just gibberish as it was before. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
what I like to hear.
you know, it's just, you know, yeah, there's just there's some difference. It's not as scary, and my brain doesn't just immediately shut it down as undecipherable, you know, code speak, which is cool. And then being able to discern like what it is, you know, like, oh, this is Rust, oh, this is JavaScript, you know, TypeScript, this is you know, yeah, like being able to kind of see the insider of it and help to kind of know which, you know, where you are, whether you're in Asia and these are Asian languages, or you're in Europe and these are European languages, or you're in the Spanish, you know, like different languages, being able to not know what they are, but know the group, or you know what I mean? So that's cool.
100%. Once I know how to say hello, I always feel better. Oh, that's a validator. Okay, I can't, you know, I don't know what else is exactly going on here, but validator. I have a place to plant my flag.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay.
And if anybody here, I know like Augustine shared last week that he's been diving deep into Aiken. If anybody else here is doing the same, be sure to say so at a live coding session or on Discord, because it's going to be fun just to start having side study groups, and not everybody has to specialize in everything, right? We're going to expose ourselves to a few different ways of doing things over the next few modules. But at the end of the day, you're not going to need to be an Aiken and a Plutus expert, right? You're probably going to go really deep in one direction or another. And it'll be good for people to kind of start identifying which way they want to go. And we can start having some subgroups of people getting together for that kind of thing. But it seems like for now, maybe we spend a little bit more time on some front end stuff, and these two troubleshooting tasks could be a really good thing to look at. The idea is every time we squash some bugs, hopefully we learn a little bit more, like a little bit more fluency with the code bases that we're working within. And so this actually has a connection to what we're talking about in terms of smart contract languages being updated as well. Would there be any objections to maybe doing a little review of a couple of bugs in the front end and seeing why they're happening?
I like that. Because it's a more kind of a holistic problem, you know, and so we'll get into the code, and we'll see some React and, you know, like all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Anybody have questions that would take us a different direction before we jump into that? Cool, let's give it a try. And maybe we could even bang this task out while we're here. I bet we could do all three of those before this meeting is over. So here's what we'll do. First of all, I'm going to jump over to the code editor and make sure to open up the course. Okay, and we're up to date on main right here. So this is the course repo. A lot of people have already made contributions to this in one way or another as you work through the course. And I think we're good if I just run the thing. And so now if I go back over here, should have the host. Yeah. That's really funny, but it makes me search the web for that. I don't like that. Better.
So you did a,
I had to add the HTTP for some reason because I'm in a different browser instance.
Okay.
And the first thing we wanted to look at is this trouble right here with these names. And it's good. Like I always want to check first. Oh, sorry, I'm not.
yeah, we can't see what.
Sure it's not there. I'm sorry, it didn't move.
But the template, but PBL front end template 2023 is the.
Yeah, that's this site right here that you're accessing every time you go to plutuspbl.io.
Okay.
And sorry, I didn't realize my screen share was paused. So the problem we want to solve now is, for some reason, these used to be contributor names, but they're showing up as a bizarre string of characters. Okay. And anybody who's maybe looking at this for the first time, do you have any initial instincts as to what might be going on here?
It's decoding them wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It thinks it's looking at, I don't know, a byte string, and it's not. It's looking at something else, or
Exactly.
because
So, yeah,
all the starting characters are all the same, which would be
that's
consistent with.
right. Nice. Good.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah. So there's some pattern that was in these names already, but it's just, yeah, it's being taken off in some weird direction. And this all stems from, if you've looked at a token name on Cardano CLI, for example, you know that it's a byte string. And it needs to be converted. And there's different tools we've used. I think the one we share in this course is the hex to string.
Yeah.
Tool. Yeah, this one, stringfunctions.com. Right. So yeah, so actually, could I just feed this into that tool in one way or another? Like,
To see what happens.
yeah. What would happen if I did this? Ooh, that looks better, maybe. And what if I then said that from hex? Okay, that gets me back to that. That's good. Hex. Okay, that looks like it might be a step closer. I don't know. I'm just screwing around now to see if there's a place where it turns into something legible. I think I found it yet. No, it just keeps getting longer. Okay, so that's not going to help. But yeah, we know this is an encoding issue, and I have a hypothesis about where it's coming from, and I have no idea if this is true. I haven't looked yet. But some of you noticed that the other day, this number right here was at 0. For some reason, we weren't loading any information about how many PBL tokens had been minted. And because this data right here about module completion and this data right here about how many people have changed their lucky number, these are all coming from a similar query. So all of this data at the top of this was missing. And so why? Now, what was especially interesting about this bug is that the data down here was not missing. It was fine. So some of the data was still loading, but this at the top was not. And that was kind of the clue that I followed to get this working again. So let's now go into the source code. We're on the contributors page. So that's what I'm going to open up first. And I'm going to trace our way to this chart right here and figure out where this data is coming from. So back over to VS Code. I can open up the front end template, source, and pages because I wanted to look at that contributors page. And I wasn't on any sub route. I was just on the index. So I think this is the page I was just looking at. And this is where I'm going to follow. I'm going to close the file explorer now and just open additional pages by clicking through the objects that I want to look at. So for example, at the top of this page, there was a box called the Course Mastery Overview. And that's actually the component that we were just looking at with that data in it. So I'm holding down Control and clicking on this. So now that component opens in a new tab. And if I scroll down, there's a bunch of different information here, but I just want to see, is this the page I was looking at? And here it is. The return statement is here. There's a grid with a bunch of sub boxes inside it. That grid has 3 columns on a large screen, and on a smaller screen, just 1 column. So this is a little bit of responsive design right here. This means that if you're on like a cell phone screen, you'll just see 1 box taking up the whole width of the page. But on anything big, you'll see things split into 3 columns. And that's exactly what we see right here. All right, 3 columns. I can actually go into dev mode. Whoops. And view this on like a mobile device, and you can see it's actually not beautiful. There's a little bit of wonky formatting here on the narrow screen. Let's see, like an iPhone screen. Yeah, so actually the responsive designs are not perfect here because this course modules thing is mucking things up. But you can see these boxes in this grid, at least, they're appearing as 1 column. So that's just a tiny bit about responsive design. Different styling libraries are going to handle that differently, but we're using Chakra in this case. And to handle that, looks like this. Now, the first box we have inside of this grid is this one. And it's the one that says, here's how many PPBL tokens are minted. And all it's doing is it's looking at the length of this variable called current data. So, right, if we load some data correctly, I'm assuming that's some kind of list, all we have to do is look at the length of that list, and there you go. That's how many people have registered for this course by minting a contributor token. Question is, where'd that current data come from? And there's a few ways I can look for this if I'm studying somebody else's code. But one nice way to do it is just to highlight the term you're looking for and press Control F to search for it. And so you can see, okay, well, this is the 8th occurrence of this term, current data. It must have been defined somewhere up above. And so now we could just work through this file. We have a use state hook that holds a list. This is not great TypeScript yet because it says that could be a list of anything, right? So we're not quite type checking right here. But that's a more advanced topic that we'll touch later on. Let's keep looking for this term. So we have our use state hook. Down here, we set the data to something called combined. Okay, well, what's that? It's defined right here. It's also a list of anything. And it's concatenating 2 sets of data right here. JSON data 1 and JSON data 2. This is a very primitive example of how to hold data from like a big query, okay, from something bigger than like just asking for a couple of transactions or a couple of addresses. And it's really not best practice the way this is presented here, but it does illustrate how this API works. What API are we using? Well, let's look at where that's actually coming from. So JSON data 2 is coming from something called response 2. JSON data 1 is coming from something called response 1. and each of those responses actually look similar. What they're doing is they're calling an API endpoint from the Go Maestro service. Okay. Now, maybe you've looked at this before, maybe you haven't, but this is where the problem was coming from. Okay. So in a lot of this project, we're using GraphQL to query on-chain data, and GraphQL did not change. But Go Maestro, which is an even newer tool than Aiken, is changing as it rolls out. And we should expect things like that to happen, especially with brand new tools. The problem was they changed their API, and we had to change these queries just a little bit to reflect it.
Wait,
Sebastian.
time out.
Yep, good spot for it.
Whistle. Okay, so that was great. Thank you for, I mean, we went through the process, we dug down through the code, we went into, et cetera, et cetera. We used, some find and replace features and stuff. And then we got to that API call to Maestro. And then you're saying that Maestro changed the way they were serving up that data. And that's what caused some of the issues before. And then you were like, oh, they changed it. And then you made a fix. So maybe there's more fixes to be made. Okay. Okay. Does that bring us up to speed somewhat?
Well said. Very good. Thank you.
I'm tracking. Yeah, that's great. I really
Awesome.
appreciate this color-coded code. That's so easy on the eyes.
Nice. So,
And a great little tip about, highlighting and Control F. And yeah, I always thought that was, yeah, I like to see other people doing that because it's, that is the way it's done. Yeah.
that's right. There's always, so in code, it always comes from somewhere, right?
Right,
That thing that's causing me problems was defined somewhere. And if I could find it, I can probably keep taking backward steps till you figure it out.
Cool. Anyone else with
Sebastian had a hand.
Hey, these same situations could be it's a situation with Aiken, for example, that could be the same situation that I was commenting initially.
Yeah, I mean, the exact technical mechanics of why we're getting a different outcome is different, right? Because we're talking about compiling a validator versus pinging an API endpoint. But the spirit of the thing is exactly the same, right? These are new tools. They're being built and updated in real time. And as early users of them, we have, the benefits of having access to these teams and being able to ask them questions. But we also take on the responsibility of, hey, look, it's going to break. This is mesh, same way, right? I can't tell you how many times I've talked to Abdel Karim, and he's been like, you're going to hate me for this one, but everything's about to break, But that's part of the journey, right? If you realize when you're building a brand new tool that there was a better way to do it, you go back and you make those changes.
It really is an opportunity to be in the spot where there's so many things breaking. And it's wonderful that the focal point of our course and our learning together is solving problems. So that's a real benefit, because if we were here to make things work and we were answer focused as opposed to question focused, then we would be frustrated, we'd be frustrated and it wouldn't be as fun. But if we're no, we're here to squash bugs, we're here to break things and then unbreak them, then all of a sudden it's just oh yeah, we're at the right picnic.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Seb.
Yeah, I have another question. When you are using services like BlockForce, for example, they provide you a token, a password, or a kind of password to use to can call the service. And my question is, when you are working in your repo, for example, and you in your code, and you want to upload that code to a repo at GitHub or GitLab, how you need that code, that password to making calls, and people need that password to make some calls to that service. What's the best practice to maintain? I don't know how it's the procedure, but you need that code. So you can paste you can paste that password in the code in the code,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
And so yeah, how you can do it in this case?
That's a perfect question. That's a great thing for us to spend a moment on right here. And for Block Frost versus Go Maestro, it's going to be very similar. Okay. So right here, this Go Maestro endpoint, you can see it's on pre-prod, but it also exists on mainnet. Okay. And for Block Frost, Go Maestro, it's the exact same thing. When you go into your account via the web interface, you'll have to make separate API keys for mainnet versus pre-prod. Okay, so in this case, I have pre-prod enabled in my free Go Maestro account, and I have a access key for using those pre-prod endpoints. If I wanted to use mainnet, I would need a different access key. Now, like Sebastian just said, I could just copy and paste my access key right here and just put it directly in the code, right? But that would be bad practice. That would work very elegantly for me, but if I ever pushed my code up to a public Git repo, anybody could just see that access key. Now, in the case of a free Go Maestro pre-prod account, is that access key really worth that much? Of course it's not, right? But it's absolutely still the wrong thing to do, because often you are going to have much more valuable API access that you don't want to just share with the world. So what do we do instead of just typing that key right here? Okay. Well, this is a next feature where it says process.env. And did I have to import this? No, it's just built in. There's not even any imports up here. Because I'm using Next, this is actually built into the project. So I don't have to do anything other than use this variable right here. Now, I'm not going to open this file because we're on a live broadcast right now, right? So I'm not going to expose my pre-prod API key, but I'll show you how it's structured. So here, do you notice how there's these grayed out directories and files? I don't know if you can tell the difference on the way my Zoom is coming through, but whatever's grayed out is because it's included in the git ignore, which, oh, here it is, which is right here. Okay, and you can add any files or directories that you never want to push live to a repo to your git ignore. And one of the things you'll see down here is we're ignoring any local environment files. So .env, the star means anything, wildcard, okay? So any file that's shaped like this, .env something .local. In other words, this file right here, .env.local, should not be included when I push to GitLab. The string that's being inserted right here as the API key is in that env.local file right here. And there's documentation for how to do this. Let me just call this up in the browser.
That's interesting. While you get that ready, because I think in other frameworks that you do have to import this sort of environmental variable thing, and it is something that we as novice junior programmers, like I guess it happens a lot where they just put their keys into the thing and then shenanigans.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And this is the beauty of using Next, because you're exactly right. In many cases, you will have to import specialized libraries. And if you were using just plain React, you would have to do that.
Okay.
And that's why we use Next for this project. And honestly, this is, unless there's a compelling reason not to, I will often start with Next, just because it takes care of a lot of that common stuff, right? I don't want to have to think too hard about environment variables. And I know that Next takes care of it, right? React framework for building web applications. And where is that in the docs? I guess we could search. Environment variables. Okay, so we have this whole page, configuration. Okay, and then environment variables. So you can read about it right here. Use your .env.local file. Environment variables for the browser have to start with this all caps next underscore public underscore. And that's exactly what you see over here in the code.
Yeah.
This prefix right here, next underscore public underscore, is what I'm going to use anytime I want to be able to pull an environment variable into my front end. Okay. It won't always be the front end.
So in that env.local file, there's going to be something that says, next underscore public maestro key equals then the thing. Okay.
Exactly. And when you make a Go Maestro account, I'll show you that in just a second too. When you make an account, the first thing you do is you choose what network you want to use, mainnet, pre-prod, preview. And then the second thing you do is you're shown your API key. And actually their web interface will never show it to you again. You get one chance to copy it and you have to file it away. And if you ever lose it, you just have to create a new one. And you get one chance to copy that. So here's these docs. Let me drop these into the chat just so you've got them. But finally, that still only helps with the local development part, okay? It doesn't help with the actual deployment part. If I want this website to work live, well, now what do I do? And this is part of the way that the Next team makes money. Okay, so Next, I don't know, I forget if it's the same organization or if it's like, if these are partner organizations, but you've got Vercel here. Okay.
Oh,
right. So what is I forget, we can look it up later, like what the relationship between the Next and the Vercel team. I think Next is just a product of Vercel. But I very happily pay a $20 subscription fee every month to Vercel to make it easy to just deploy a bunch of different Next websites. Okay, and I think I have, 5 or 6 different sites deployed there. And yeah, is it worth $20 to save all the time of doing all the work of building a site and taking care of the servers? For me, it is right now. Okay. Do I wish that service was on Dandelion or some other distributed Web3 server? Hell yeah, let's build it, right? But this absolutely works and is a fair trade for me in my workflows. And because these two things are coupled, it's really easy. We could probably find it in the docs right now.
I think I've got a Vercel account.
Yeah, there's even a free tier, right? That can take care of a lot of what you need. Anyway, it's in the docs somewhere, but once you have a website configured, and it's basically a one-step process, 2 steps. You link your Vercel account to a GitHub or a GitLab account, and then you just select the repository from your projects that you want to deploy. Once you do that, you can do things like give it whatever domain name you own, right? So PlutusPBL.io, we can map that to a project. And there's a web-based interface for adding your environment variables. Okay. Now, is that completely secure? I don't know. I wouldn't put a mainnet spending key up there on Vercel. Okay. But would I put a pre-prod API key? Sure, I trust it enough to do that. Okay. So you plug that in, you set that variable, and now Vercel's servers know to inject that variable into your project so that you can successfully make the API calls that you need to make.
But for everybody, right? For all the users.
Right, for the public facing web app that you now have. And so that's
Okay.
why anybody who goes to PlutusPBL.io can successfully view that data.
Have we gone down a rabbit hole?
A little bit. This is one of those things, right? Everybody gets curious about this at some point, and so just want you to have a little exposure to that. All right, but we still haven't answered this question yet, so now let's try to find it. Okay. Really briefly, the difference here, the only thing they changed is the way we handle pages. So in the previous version of this Go Maestro API, it was V0. So I had to change this from a V0 into a V1. And there used to be a page variable right here. So I could say, give me the first 100 results, page 1, right? Give me the second 100 results. That would be page 2, etc. But that's actually a little bit of an inconvenient way of doing things. And so they improved it. What they did is they said, okay, when you make a query, take the first this many results from that query. In this case, I'm looking for all the UTXOs at the contributor address. And then what this query actually returns is the data in addition to what they call a next cursor, which is just a little hashed string, okay, that points to where you left off in the list. And that gives us like a bookmark or an identifier. If we just pass that cursor to our next query, it knows, give me the next 100 results, picking up from where the prior query left off.
Oh,
Nice little improvement. And this kind of follows some best practices.
best practices for gobbling down like a long, big, giant list.
Yeah, so if you want to build something like an infinite scroll, which is what a lot of us expect,
yeah,
it's a really nice way to do that. And so like the way the project works right now, and this is actually one of the front end dev tasks that I want to introduce, like as we do start moving deeper into contribution, this is something that anybody's going to be welcome to pick up, right? All this data down here, it's loaded already, right? But wouldn't this look a little bit more professional if like these were showing up on the page as you continued to scroll, right? Sites do that. And that's also a performance thing. We should only grab data if we're actually going to look at it or use it in some way. So yeah, the way they've done it now makes it a little bit easier to implement infinite scroll, for example.
Okay.
All right, now I have no idea what's going on with these names.
I was wondering, I was like, I think he knows what it is, and he's
No,
just
actually, this was new to me when I read Sebastian's message earlier today. So let's go blind into this one. All right, I'm gonna just close this file without saving any changes for now, and I don't need this. So we just looked at the course mastery overview. And then the next section says PPBL 2023 contributor token list. But that's actually the next thing. There's a few different views of this data just to expose you to different ways of looking at it. So this list down here is actually fine. Look at that. See?
So that's interesting.
That looks fine. I guess these little boxes right here, they must be not coming from this whole section of the code below the PBL contributor token list. By the way, this is an emoji. These are those little construction emojis.
Oh, and those constructor emojis aren't working.
Oh, no, not on everything. Yeah, so I was wondering, like, there's not perfect web browser compatibility. You know, like in this browser right here, they show up as these white outlines. Other times they're color version. So yeah,
Oh.
there's all sorts of just stuff to play with in this imperfect code base right now. But I guess those squares, those contributor boxes that we want to look at are in that mastery overview that was just open. So we got to open it again. Let's see.
And it looks like it's the top and the header part, you know, like the bottom looks okay.
So this grid right here, this one ends on line 293. I can just close that whole component right here. And that's the one that has just the 6 grid boxes at the top of the page with the different pie charts and the summary data. So I'm just going to close this. But then down below, this is another grid that in this case, you see the responsive design right here. On the biggest screen, it actually has 5 columns. And that's what we see down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across. And so this grid has a map inside of it. Okay, so you see the opening grid tag, closing grid tag, and then this map over a list in between. And this is a common design pattern when you have big data sets, right? You would say, okay, for every item in this list, let's make a box with some information inside of it. What information? Ooh, the information from the contributor record that's being passed, right, from this mastery status list. You see how it's a list of contributor records? So we've got the contributor record with the brackets right here. It's a list of these things. And an individual item that we're mapping over is one of those things from the list. A contributor record, by the way, looks like this. It's got some datum and an alias in it. This is the name of the token. And then that contributor reference datum looks like this. If this bit right here is brand new to you, it's something you're going to have a chance to practice with as you start looking at mesh. But this is one way that we can construct datum, but in a TypeScript setting, okay, fields and constructor. So there's our datum. It's going to look like this, pulled from right here. And then the alias, that's the thing we're using as the contributor token name. So let's look at that. You see right here, stat.alias, that's the problem. Remember that it was in a black box? So this is a box with a dark background and a light font color. The next box down below is going to have that kind of off-white background color and plain font. So you can see.
So stat alias is where that's the stat alias data. So we want to look, maybe there's something.
There's a problem there. And everything else actually looks fine, right? Like the lucky number is coming through as an integer. That's good. And then we have a map inside of a map, because in addition to mapping over each contributor, we also have to map over that contributors' accomplishments. So this right here is this list of completed modules. Okay, but notice there's no problems there. Those are decoding correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's wrong with the token name? Where is that coming from? Gotta find it. So where is mastery status list coming from in the first place? All right, it's use state. We expect a list of contributor records. That's good. That matches what we saw a moment ago. It's being set here as result. What's result? Result is, it looks like it's a list because we're pushing to it. So result is defined here as the list of contributor records we expect. But when we initialize it, when we start it, it's an empty list. This is also a common design pattern when you're building up data sets. Okay, so we say, okay, I know I'm going to have a list of things. What things? Contributor records. But what's in that list? Nothing yet. Now we can add items to a list with this push function. So result dot push. And what are we pushing into it? A record. Okay, what's a record? Ah, there it is. It's of type contributor record. It better be because result has to be a list of contributor records.
Okay. Okay.
You getting there?
I think we're getting close. We're getting
Okay,
close.
so we're pushing a record, but what are we pushing? We're pushing an L. This might be something here. Okay. It looks like maybe this has something to do with this alias. So first things first, I'm hacking, right? I'm on a copy of this repository that's already safely broken online. I can't screw anything up right here because I haven't pushed any changes, right? So why don't I mean, the first thing I want to do is just, can I get rid of that hex to string? I mean, I don't know if it'll work. Let's try it.
And is the problem showing up locally, I guess?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So let's see. So I just saved that change and I reloaded. And do I get the desired behavior?
It's different though.
Huh. That's interesting.
No, it's different.
This looks good, but I feel like I'm just getting the wrong part of it. I actually, look at this right here, 323032. That says 2023. So our 2023 is right here.
Yeah.
I think the 0504 is wrong. It might just be starting. You see, I don't think this is the problem because this is a hex string that does need to be decoded.
Right, but your instinct to go to that decoder like didn't give us immediately, so
Sure.
that seems
So
odd.
watch this. If I just take like the end of this thing, what if I just decode that part? Hex convert 2023 WGZ. Yeah, like that's more like what I would expect. That's actually really good. And so now here we go. Wait a minute. I know that a single hex character actually has 2 digits in it. Okay. So there should be an even number of characters in these strings. And I know this is PBL right here. So what comes before the PBL? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. It's an odd number of characters. And that's going to be a problem. because basically instead of it getting to here and saying PPBL, it's going to say 05, what character is that? 04, what character is that? 24, C3. And you see how this C3 actually spans what's supposed to be,
Right.
the P. And so now we got everything shifted, and that's why we're getting all those weird characters, because we're throwing hex, we're throwing unexpected hex digits at the converter, and it's converting them into all the wild other characters that they are. Oh. So if only we could get the right string here, that would feel a little bit better. And now another trick. And we're not, okay, yeah, we got 7 minutes. Yeah, we're going to just barely get through this. Watch this. Sometimes I don't want to just render everything on the front end to figure things out. So this is why you'll often see people like type console.log right in the middle of their work. Okay. And so let's just say check right here. But am I in? Why doesn't it like that? Oh, because I'm inside the record. That was giving me an error because I was inside of this object that we were building. I don't want to do that here, but this is better. And let's just say check 99 right here. So just in case there's other checks. And if I go back now to my browser and I look at the console.
There it is.
Okay, and it actually showed up, you can see a lot of times, right? 39 times this check 99 message popped up. Okay. Which makes sense, right? It's iterating over a whole list of mastery data.
Yeah,
That's
39.
a whole bunch of times. Okay.
That's pretty cool.
What I want to do here is just say, hey, wait a minute. What was the contents of this thing right here? Contributor UTXO assets 1 unit.
Wait a minute. I can't see. Did you go somewhere?
Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like I paused sharing and I keep tapping the button. It's weird. All right, so I just added to my console log to log the actual value of this variable right here. And here it is. So now you see it's not just giving me a count of check 99s, it's then giving me a string to follow each one. Now, if I try to convert one of these entire unit strings, it's going to look a little bit weird. Oh, and I happen to grab nasty
Hey!
honey. Right.
Hey!
Now look, we
Nasty.
still have a bunch of weird stuff here. But after that point, we've got what we expect, the token name, 100 PPBL 2023, and then some name, custom name. This bit, this first bit, that's the currency symbol or the policy ID. And we don't want to decode that part.
Yeah.
So we use what's called the substring function on that string.
Oh.
Problem is, I think this number is wrong. How long, anybody know this trivia off the top of your head? How long is a currency symbol?
Huh. I'm gonna ask.
I'm pretty sure it's 56 characters. So watch this. In my console log, I'm going to type, first of all, substring 56 instead of 63. But then I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to wrap this whole thing in a hex to string function. That's just a helper function, right? And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my terminal, my browser console, and I want to see if I get good names. And look at that. There's some nice names like I'd expect right there.
Huh.
Okay. So somehow that 56 got changed into a 63 at some point. I'm not sure where. But now I feel better about that. Now let's just grab this as it is and replace it right here as the alias. I don't need to be running this to console every time.
Bing, bang, boom.
And that looks a lot better. There's some nice names. Okay.
Look at that. So it was this currency symbol, or that, what is it called? Substring.
Yeah.
And it was, and did
So
you know, in one, it was 63 before, and then did you know that it was 56?
I mean, so actually before it was 62.
62.
I don't know. Yeah, it got changed to 63, but that's, that'll happen sometimes when you have
What?
a whole bunch of different contributors. But watch, the reason it was 62 is that we actually wanted to remove the 100 at the beginning as well.
Oh.
So now the 100 isn't there. Now I just got rid of 100. That's 3 characters, but as hex digits, that's a total of 6 characters. And
Right.
that's why I went from 56 plus 6 to 62. Maybe
Okay.
I want to get rid of the PBL at the beginning of every one of these as well, or the PBL 2023. I could do that, right? So what's that? That's another 8 characters. So 16 hex characters. And I would have to go from 62 plus 16 to 78. And now if I go back to the browser, I don't even see the PBL 2023. I just see all these names.
What is this magic substring?
Isn't it great?
James,
yeah.
Could you also splice the string and tell it to start counting at the 323 so that it always just looks for that starting? Would that
You could you could like find in the string and split there. And that you would have to do that if everything else wasn't standardized at the start of the string, right? But I'm able to take this lazy deterministic approach because we know how long a currency symbol is, and we know exactly which characters we're taking off of this standardized token name.
Okay.
The substring method is a string class used to create smaller strings from the bigger one. The method extracts characters between 2 indices from a string and returns the substring. Yeah, so you could just find, like, if you give a big long string and there's something in the middle of it, you can just get it. This default is probably just take characters off the front.
That's right. And here, this is a very good site, Mozilla, you might have heard of them, is still providing incredible JavaScript and other web development documentation. And here's the substring docs right here. And you can see, right? So like, here's a string, here's a substring with 2 parameters passed, right? It says skip the first character or start at index 1, depending on how you want to read that, right? And end with this character or end before this character, right? So go from 1 to 3. That's the OZ, right?
Awesome.
Right? If I only pass it 1 argument, it just says remove that many characters from the beginning of the string. Yeah, this is my go-to whenever I'm playing with especially strings and arrays in JavaScript. There's just so much syntax like that I can't remember it exactly half the time. And so I'll just keep this site right here open. But it's good docs and it shows you all the different possibilities.
I'm
Cool.
pasting that in.
Oh, thank you. Nice. Well, we made it through some things today. Real quick, I can push this change however we'd like. What do people think? Should we just go just with the alias? Or should we keep the PPBL 2023 on the front?
Well, it's sort of now, it's not a big deal, but when it becomes 2024 and there's other ones, then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, then it would be cool.
True.
In the meantime, it's all good because we're all 2023. Unless we restart, I don't know. I kind of like it without it.
I think it looks more elegant without it too.
Yeah.
So changing one number. Here's 78 as the substring index. But of course, let's just for fun, if I change it to a 77, I know you can't see this off screen, but if I change it to an odd number of 77, what happens to those token names?
Same.
Cool.
And why was it? It's just a typo. Like, why did it get off of one?
A little typo snuck into the code. I don't know where. I mean, we could look at the commit logs if we were like anal and kind of top down like that. But...
who's to blame? Who's to blame?
I mean,
James.
people won't lie, but who cares?
I don't think that's. I'm thankful because that was great. That was a really good energizing session. I really feel, I still have to work through my stuff, but I'm energized. Like going through that, like that's a real value. So I feel really good about today's thing.
Thanks, Newman.
Yeah, for sure.
Josh has a question. Are you using substring for hex string or standard? You could do either one. Okay, so actually I could, well, no, but okay, so in this case, look, we're taking first inside the parentheses, we're taking the substring and then we're passing the substring to hex to string. And I think the reason that would be recommended in this case is there's no reason to translate the policy ID, right, to a legible string. It's impossible. Yeah. But obviously you don't have to go that direction, right? In other cases, you might decode a string first and then take a substring of that. That's fine. Dan.
Yeah, just a quick one. Does the long list at the bottom, does that have the full name of the token on it?
It does, yeah, without the 100. And that's coming from a different place, actually. Just
that's cool then. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter that the top ones are shorter because you got the full name below.
That's right. You can play with it either way. Yep. And yeah, these are both just examples of components, right? And this is another place where, is there a better, more exciting, beautiful way to present this data? Probably.
You could have it strobing in different colors and something daft like that, couldn't you?
Well, you could color code it by how much mastery somebody has, and if once they get to 204, yeah, you could just make it blink at you. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
Be careful what you ask for. You just might get
hey, listen, if this site turns into a circus of bizarre and wonderful UI just because people are having fun with it, that's okay with me. You know, so we can have fun. This is our playground, is to mess around with this course. So yeah, and anytime somebody has an idea, hey, could we get it to do this? We can have fun doing that in the months to come. All right. Hey, I appreciate the free range and open to today's session and this little deep dive that we ended with. Thanks, everybody. Same time, same place tomorrow, Thursday, the 31st, and every Wednesday and Thursday in September. See everybody soon.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.